Okay, everyone, so it's Cup final week. We're less than 5 days away now from Celtic versus Rangers at Hampden Park. We're going to take a little break from things today on the channel and chat about something pretty interesting that came pretty much out of the blue as far as I'm concerned at the end of last week. The Celtic End is a fan-initiated campaign to turn the Jock Stein stand into a safe standing section. The campaign has so far been endorsed by the Green Brigade, North Curve Celtic, Boys Celtic and Celtic Shared, and we've got Martin from Celtic Shared on with me today for a good old chat about all of this. Martin, I hope you're well. Would you mind just explaining a wee bit about what Celtic Shared do for anyone who maybe isn't aware?
Yeah, they introduced a couple of years ago off the back of the sort of disastrous 10 in a row campaign. It wasn't a knee-jerk reaction or anything like that. It was something that had been in the making anyway, regardless of the off the field disasters that we had that season. It was felt that there was a kind of gap in the market, if you want to put it like that, for a sort of fan sort of union. So the idea was I think it became quite evident during that season, more evident than it had been in years gone by, that Celtic supporters never really had a voice, and they weren't, quite as united as they potentially could have been. So Celtic Shared was kind of introduced to try and facilitate sort of ongoing communication between different fan groups, and obviously over recent years we saw the rise of sort of fan media like yourselves play an important part in terms of engaging with the rest of the supporters. So it was introduced to try and actually facilitate kind of ongoing engagement between individual Celtic supporters, CSCs, fan media, so on and so forth, to try and kind of give a united voice to the Celtic support, and ensure the club and others are working in the interests of the fan base. So still very, very early days with a sort of successful campaign. Most recent one was obviously the Bernard Higgins one, which was about 12 months ago now, which Celtic Shared kind of played a key role in, and thankfully we reached a positive conclusion on that, and so hopefully we're kind of be a sort of voice for years to come.
So you're taking on the next challenge of hopefully turning the Jock Stein stand, or the traditional Celtic End, into a full stand of fans literally standing at the games. 8,000 leaflets were handed out to fans in the Jock Stein lower on Saturday. My pal actually sits there, and he sent me a photo of the flyers. Pretty kind of interesting stuff in there that we can probably tackle. The aim of the campaign is to have one large united standing section at the traditional Celtic End. The vision is to have the entire stand, lower and upper tier, as a standing section, although the lower tier is the natural starting point, it says. So it seems like the plan is going to kind of take gradual steps. I know you wanted to maybe point out how early it is in proceedings.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's quite clear. I don't think anybody involved in the campaign across any of the groups, or indeed anybody we've spoken to since, who want to get involved in campaign and expect this to be a short-term win. It's not going to be like that. It is something that will be sort of medium to long-term. Now we're getting the ball rolling. The response has been absolutely fantastic. We're getting the ball rolling, and we're asking those who are maybe not sure now or even totally against it to kind of approach this with an open mind. But under no illusions, there is obstacles, there is legitimate concerns, but we hope to again reach our positive conclusion through sort of open engagement and positive communication with everybody involved, and clearly probably touch on it as we go on. Clearly, the most important in that sense is the people who are currently season ticket holders in the Jock Stein lower stand. So that's where the leaflets went. Also, your mate has picked up one of them, and that was the obvious starting point, because it's important that those people get their place and are sort of consulted.
Yeah, and very in-depth, the leaflets as well, answered some questions that we'll come on to. One thing that is mentioned in the leaflets, mentioned on your website, do you want to give us the website? Sorry, what's the
So it's nice and easy, thecelticend.com.
Okay, nice and easy to remember. And in your video as well, you mention in all three the famous yellow wall at Borussia Dortmund. Is that kind of what we're going for here? Is this the idea, and how much of a driver has that been?
I mean, I think that's it's the obvious comparison. It's so iconic, everybody knows it. But there's other examples across Europe, but I think that's one that Celtic supporters will find easy to identify with. Clearly, Celtic has a sort of very unique fan base, and it will not be a kind of carbon copy of the Yellow Wall or anything like that. But that was to kind of get people imagine what it kind of could look like. And I personally speaking, I envisage it, being a wee bit different. You could have various CSC banners, and also you'd like to think that the ultras would be at the front of that, as is the case across Europe. But generally speaking, Celtic supporters will put their own sort of touch on things as they always do. But that, the Yellow Wall is clearly the most obvious kind of comparison. That was used to kind of get people's imagination going and sort of give an idea and flavour as to kind of what we're looking at.
I lived in Germany for a wee while, and virtually every stadium there has a standing section behind one of the goals, a kind of ultras section. And a lot of the time it's nowhere near as safe standing as what we've got in the North Curve at the moment. This is Stuttgart's ground that you're seeing on screen at the moment. Everyone, as I say, nowhere near as safe. The likes of Mainz and Kaiserslautern as well, and that's where the tifos come from. That's where the atmosphere is generated. You also say 2,700 currently in the standing section. The promo video says a similar number are on the waiting list, but a significant amount more would also like the option if it was there. I mean, 2,700 at the moment. You clearly reckon that there's a lot of Celtic fans would want to take up the option.
I mean, there's 2,700 just now who are standing. The boys have their own, and that I think everybody who's going to Celtic Park can see that's actually grown almost. It looks like it's grown sort of week on week. So there's a demand there. Celtic, by their own admission, have said that there's a problem with overcrowding. That people might remember the kind of barriers that were put up to try and prevent that. So again, it sort of demonstrates that there's a further demand not only to add to the North Surf section. So that, I mean, you're talking right off the back, 2,700 already. Same again, and on a waiting list, you're probably talking already sort of 6,000 there. You look at European nights right across, I think, the lower tier. A lot of people are standing for the Champions League matches. You can bet your bottom dollar on Sunday. The majority of people at Hampden will choose to stand at the cup final. So I think it's clear to see that the desire and the hunger is there for that. And actually, I think another important point to make on that is people are growing. When I grew up supporting Celtic and go to games, all I knew was an all-seater stadium. Fans sat and they stood up whenever there was a goal or there was a chance or something exciting happened in the game. People who are growing up now are seeing dedicated standing areas, not only at Celtic Park but further afield. So that's all they know. So the chances are those people are going to want to stand as well. So this desire to stand is not going to go away. If anything, the demand is kind of going to go up the way. So we feel that it's only a matter of time before Celtic have to increase the standing capacity at Celtic Park, and if they're going to do that, we feel that the natural spot for that would be at the traditional Celtic end.
There's an interesting bit in the flyer that asks the question, who is the Celtic end for? And the answer is it's for everyone. While ultras may lead the singing, the stand is big enough to cater for all kinds of supporters. So I think it's important to maybe get that into our minds as well. Because even in the current North Curve, which is only, as we say, less than 3,000, it's not as if every single person in there knows the words to every song or joins in every song.
And listen, and many people within the North Curve don't have the desire. They're not, not all ultras are within the North Curve. Anybody who's in the North Curve can join North Curve Celtic Initiative. Like the stadiums you've referenced earlier, the ultras would be behind the goals, sort of front and centre of the stand. But I mean, the stand at the Jock Stein Law, I believe, caters for about 7,500 people. Celtic don't have 7,500 ultras. Many people within my family and friends would like the opportunity to stand at 90 minutes every game, but they don't want to be joining in every song and jumping about the way many of the Green Brigade and the boys would do, which is fine. And that's why it's important that people understand that you don't have to be an ultra or have the desire to be an ultra to be able to enjoy being present in what could be the Celtic end.
Yeah, I think that's quite an interesting point. Is this something that has been in planning for quite a while?
I mean, I think certainly it's not been something that's been dreamed up. I think even when the Green Brigade moved to the North Curve section as it is now, I don't envisage the plan was always just to stay there. You always want to kind of move and look beyond that. And I think for any ultras group, I think behind the goal is always the kind of end goal. So as much as the North Curve's been great, not only for those in it, but also I think it's enhanced the atmosphere and the experience for others, even if they're not in it. I think there is also, a stepping stone. You see it again. It's not just at Celtic Park. Many others are kind of looking at something similar. So there's kind of an irony there that Celtic were actually kind of pioneers of this, bringing it in 2016, and that is actually to their great credit, 'cause a lot of work went done, and a lot of people told them it couldn't happen, and there's a lot of hurdles to overcome, and they persevered along with the groups to kind of push that through. There's actually a danger that if they don't facilitate something like this, they'll actually end up being left behind, which would be a bit of a shame, considering, like I said, it was actually Celtic as a club and the fan base who actually were the pioneers of this in 2016.
I think it's been brilliant. I honestly do. There's some issues there that aren't of the North Curve or the Green Brigades do, and I think overcrowding can be an issue in the big games, and the club are clearly aware of that. So hopefully a move like this would help with that as well. You mentioned the reaction from supporters. What has that been like since Friday?
Incredible, to be honest. I think we knew. I think we already kind of knew in the back of our minds that people would really get excited about this. Celtic fans want what the best is for Celtic Football Club and the support and so on, the fan base. So I think we kind of knew that people would generally be on board with it, but I think equally we were also very surprised at the depth of excitement, and it took off. The inbox was rammed. It still is. I'm not the one looking after the inbox, which I'm thankful for that. But I mean, it's well into the four figures in terms of people who are responding and expressing an interest. And a lot of those emails that are coming through are people representing like supporters clubs. So again, they're representing maybe 20, 30, 40 people at a time. A lot of these people supporters clubs are excited at the prospect of them sort of maybe being able to stand as sort of maybe 10, 15 or whatever at a time, and maybe having their flag visible for 90 minutes and so on. So it has really kind of captured the imagination, which is great. So that's been good. But clearly there is also, you asked the question, there's obviously also reservations, which again, under no illusions that was going to happen. We took the time to, like we said earlier, leaflet the Jock Stein lower, but also it was good to kind of get a conversation with some of the people who were in there, and if I sort of one-to-one with them in terms of listening to them and listening to their reservations, and it's stuff that again we weren't surprised by. People who've maybe sat there for years on end, people who enjoy the view, people who've made friends there. Some people even get sort of emotional attachments who've maybe sat with parents who've sadly passed on and so on. So you've got to understand that, and you've got to really kind of sympathise and empathise with that, but at the same time try and hopefully make them see that the benefits of this to everyone involved at Celtic and even the team in the park.
Yeah, I mean, we got a comment in from Blair Rankin saying it's about time fans are trusted with bigger, safe standing allocations. I sit in the lower and would love for it to happen. I'd even accept being moved about in the stand if it was to accommodate others. I think it would add that extra buzz we need throughout the full 90. Blair saying there that he'd happily move. I mean, what would you say to supporters like you just referenced there that have been there for years and wouldn't fancy giving it up and moving elsewhere?
The first thing for me is totally understand. I've got family there as well who again a wee bit doubtful about it. I've sat there since I think probably the stadium opened. So you've got to. The first thing is totally understand the concerns, but it's about sort of asking them just to keep an open mind. Hear us out. Hear the plans out. See how it develops. There's an opportunity again for these people to actually be part of that as well. They don't necessarily have to move. Some people might like sitting at the football, so they'll choose to move. But like I say, now we're just asking people to keep an open mind, and hopefully over sort of medium term, they'll see the benefits, like I say, to the fans, the atmosphere, the matchday experience, and as a result, the result for Celtic Football Club, which I think we all agree are the sort of the most important thing here.
Yeah, definitely. Questions that you may or may not be able to answer, no pressure. One in from Dembele Dink. What would happen to the existing standing section? Will it be kept for fans who still want to stand at games if demand is too high in the Jock Stein? Is that something you've even got round to kind of discussing?
No, I'd imagine that would be something for for the club to really decide. There's been a few suggestions, some interesting suggestions. I think the most obvious one to me was that it would revert to a seated area. It doesn't take long. It's not a huge expense, so that would be the most obvious thing. Somebody suggested that having a party as like a dedicated disabled section, because I believe that's kind of lacking at Celtic Park now as well. So there's ideas there to be had, and that will hopefully land on the right one through like I say, ongoing engagement with Celtic. So we don't have any sort of grand plans or ideas for that. That would ultimately come down to the club to decide what they'd want to do with that. Like I say, my own personal instinct would be it would probably revert to a seated area, but who knows.
Yeah. Another one, a few people bringing up the fact that hospitality exists in the Jock Stein stand. I mean, would that be an issue? And kind of a more general question, have you had any discussions with the club about stuff like that? And have you got a kind of feeling from them?
Hospitality is probably one. It's not for me. It's not as big an obstacle as the current season ticket holders. But it is an obstacle because they're obviously based. I think the restaurant's behind the seats there. So it would be a. I don't think that it's an obstacle that can't be overcome either. Again, we're just looking for dialogue, positive dialogue with the club to try and find a solution to that. From the early conversation we've had, I don't think it is something that can't be overcome. On your question regarding the dialogue, there has been positive dialogue. Again, Celtic are very much of the opinion, they're sort of forever beating the drum that they'll continually look at ways of improving the matchday experience for supporters, and they'll consult with supporters on an ongoing basis and around that. So, it's we've got the impression it's been positive. Their biggest concern will be again those people who are in the Jock Stein lower. So there'll be a bit of consultation going on, I'd imagine, over the sort of foreseeable regarding that. But certainly they seem kind of on board, and they're forever, like I say, forever sort of peddling the line that they'll do whatever they can to improve the matchday experience. And so hopefully they'll take that on board. There is a fan census which is coming out, I believe, in the next 6 weeks or so, which will feature a bit about standing. I think the questions will be around, would you support a bigger standing area? And the next question would be something like, would you move to facilitate a big standing area? So that's still to be sort of tidied up, and that will come out, I think, to everybody in the next 6 weeks. But we'd plead for everybody to complete that census and hopefully vote in favour of an increased standing section. But that will kind of give the club a chance to sense check the desire for that, and we've got every faith that will come back favourably. And then the mandate is really there for them to kind of hopefully get the wheels in motion to try and honour that.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. I mean, just generally my thoughts, I'm a big fan of this idea. I think it's the simple thing is it's going to help Celtic. It's going to help the atmosphere at Celtic Park, and therefore it will aid the team. And I think at the heart of all of that, that's something we should all get behind. I think it would have a material impact on the pitch.
I think a big frustration for fans over the last sort of decade has been our results on the bigger sort of European stage, which time after time recently have not been up to scratch. When I was growing up, Celtic Park was a fortress, and nobody liked coming there. And while clearly I think the gap between the elite clubs and clubs at our level has sort of widened, we need to be doing everything we possibly can to try and bridge that gap. And this is an opportunity. This is one thing. It might not be the be all and end all and the answer, but it will certainly help to improve the atmosphere and make Celtic Park a more intimidating place for teams like your Barcelonas and Real Madrids to come. And like I say, it will hopefully give the team a further edge in the pitch. So yeah, I think like I say, the positives outweigh the negatives for me anyway.
And is that how you would finish the fact that obviously there's going to be various people with reservations, rightly so, as you say, but in general this is a good thing, and if people want it to happen, and if people want it to happen, the club should as well, then it can happen.
Exactly. Listen, we're here to sort of take thoughts on board. People happy to answer any questions via email, which is celticshared@outlook.com. So happy to do that if anybody's got any sort of questions, if there's anything that I've no sort of answered on here. there is also, like I said, the website, which is celticend.com, where people can continue to express their interests through the form at the bottom of the page, and like I said, keep updated with sort of developments as they carry on. So, happy, like I say, to answer questions. It will be a case of sort of ongoing dialogue. We're not under any illusions that a couple of podcast appearances and a few leaflets are going to answer everybody's questions or put to bed any reservations. Far from it. But let's sort of talk about it and see if we can come to an arrangement that sort of benefits everybody.
Interesting stuff, Martin. It's been great to find out more about the campaign, and I'm sure most people watching this would agree with that. And you've outlined the various places that people can go. So thanks very much for your time. Hopefully catch up with you soon.
Absolutely, mate. Thank you for having us. Cheers.